When I received the fabrics, they were a big surprise. I mean, of course they are, right? That's the whole point of a kind of grab bag and mystery bag of fabric. I was really pleased with the fabric that I chose randomly. I was worried about the pattern and the texture of the fabric I might receive, and I got this really beautiful kind of dusty purple silk and a small piece of chiffon, and both of those were solids, so I felt like I had a lot more kind of options at hand because of that. I really liked the silk fabric that I received. It was two-toned, so the front part was kind of this beautiful dusty purple and the back was this kind of steel gray. Of course, I didn't really like the chiffon. The chiffon was a little hard to work with, especially the size I received. It was just about a yard, and so there's not much I could do with it. I did allow myself a week to really come up with ideas. I didn't want to kind of settle on the first one. Oftentimes our first ideas may not be the best, and so I wanted to give myself time to kind of work through all of the different iterations that may come up. I was really inspired by the constraints of the competition. Utilizing 90% of a fabric that I wasn't able to choose was a big portion of that. When I was going through this process of kind of the design iterations at the beginning, I kept coming up with this question of, you know, how can I create a garment regardless of fabric size? And so instead of just designing for one garment, I kind of felt like I needed to design a process that might be easily applied to other things in the future. And so what I did was I created tubes of the fabric so that I could utilize both sides of that kind of dark steel gray and the purple, and you can manipulate the tubes to be really highly customizable to be able to utilize any fabric size and fit a garment type or size without kind of impacting the garment in the end. Often when you use kind of zero waste pattern methodologies, the outcome or the end garment is really impacted by the fabric size. Like the larger the fabric you have, the larger the garment you may have at the end. And same with draping on a dress form, right? The fabric size really impacts, you know, how many folds or kind of like pieces of kind of volume you can place on the human body. And that isn't necessarily highly repeatable based off of different fabric sizes. And also the end garment is really highly impacted by the fabric itself. So I wanted something that I could then kind of like break the tie between fabric size and end garment and really kind of manipulate in between. With the tubes, you can manipulate the thickness of the tubes, you can manipulate the depth of the seam allowance to use more or less of the fabric. And then what I did with the tubes is I wove them together to cut a new kind of surface for the garment itself. So you can also manipulate the density of the weave and also utilize kind of different weaving patterns, whether it's dual axial or multi-axial, to be able to really utilize more fabric or less depending on the overall kind of fabric. So that's what I was really interested in. The current challenge that I'm facing right now is that there's not enough chiffon to do what I'd really want to do. So it's almost the opposite problem as the silk, where I have this idea of like how to utilize more fabric into something that may not need it. The chiffon is different, where it's like, how do I make something from too little? And so I'm trying to work through what that is. So I don't have a solution yet, but I should today. Upcycling is so necessary. I feel with the amount of fabric and clothing waste that exists in the world today, it's going to be necessary for designers to think differently about how we utilize our materials. And in order to impact kind of waste streams, utilizing used materials is going to be really important to do that in the future. So I think a challenge like this is really important to get designers to start to think differently about their choices of how they design to utilize most of the fabric they have, but then also utilizing either found fabrics or upcycling used fabrics as well.